All right, so product one in the decontamination process is Chemical Guys Citrus Wash. This is a product I've been using. A guy on 6 Speed Online turned me on to this when I first started making my journal blog. I guess you could call it a blog on 6 Speed Online, and then Renlist of my Carrera S. So this would have been what, 2014, early 2014. A guy who did lots of testing for Auto Geek was down in South Florida, said you got to stop doing what you're doing and with your decontamination step, and you've got to use Chemical Guys Citrus. He called it Chemical Guys Citrus Red, and that's how I've referred to it, but Chemical Guys Citrus Wash. So this would be the soap that you would use to strip waxes, sealants, any kind of junk that's on the paint. It's just a heavier duty citrus-based stripping type soap. It's super slick. Man, there's really nothing like this on the market. And I was so disappointed. I've been chasing this dream to find something as a replacement, but nobody really makes anything. Adam's Strip Wash was not really great. I was using Geon Foam and just letting it sit there longer, but again, that's not really what it's designed to do. And so the question was, is Geon Foam just leaving a residue, or is it really stripping? And so I don't know why it dawned on me, why don't I just call Chemical Guys, see if I can get a wholesale account set up, and see if I can get them to make this stuff for me again. And so the good news is I have pallets of this crap. So this is awesome. So now we have Chemical Guys Citrus Wash back in the store, back ready to go. And so I'm pumped about having this. I sell it in a 16 ounce. So it's available in 16 ounce and available in a gallon. And this, I think, is the best product. I use it on, like we're going to use it on the Tahoe here, on a coated car or a waxed car. It really doesn't matter. So what I'll do is I'll mix it up. I'll put about 150 to 200 mLs of solution. The only reason I'm using milliliters because those are the markings on the bottle. And so we'll put 200 milliliters of product or soap in the foam cannon. I'll also use it in the bucket when we're washing. And so we'll foam the car, really let it sit longer than I would in a normal wash, and then wash the car as normal as the first step in the decontamination phase. And so we'll go out here and show you how to use it, how to mix it all up. All right, so step one in the process is to prep our foam cannon and our wash bucket for the wash. And so we're gonna put a little bit more soap than I normally would. So we're going to do about 200, more like 175. So we got 175 mLs of soap in here. So I'm mixing it really, really concentrated. And then I'm going to put it directly on my mitt in order to prepare for the wash bucket. So there's probably 3 ounces, 4 ounces in the bucket, and then whatever 175 mLs is, whatever that equates to mathematically. All right, so first thing we're gonna do, let's get the car rinsed off. All right, so before we rinse the car, let's give you a little snapshot of the carnage here on this car. So, people are always saying, man, your car's so clean, what are you washing it for? Well, on video, on camera, they tend to look pretty clean, especially a white car. But when you get down to it, the thing is a mess. And so we're going to decontaminate this whole thing. Get the surface clean in preparation for completely. Shoot, the sun's shining right through here. Anyway, we're going to go through and get all this junk off the car as much as we can in the initial wash, and then we'll go through the process using the Tar X, using the Iron X, and using the clay an auto scrub in order to get these, you know, the junk off the paint. All right, so let's get this rinsed. I just want to knock off the really heavy stuff if I can. Let's get it off the surface. So again, there's Seacorts UK on this car. But it's been a couple of years, or a year and a half, and I really haven't maintained it like I should. But the good news about detailing is that at least it's been protected. So at least it's been, you know, somewhat protected. So it ought to make decontamination a little bit easier. So this car is a precise example of why I'm simplifying the amount of cars I have in my life. All right, so let's prep our buckets. So nothing special here. Those of you who have been watching these videos for a long time have seen me do this 100 times, but the difference is here I've been, you know, generally filling up this foam cannon, you know, half or 3/4 of the way, but I'm going to go through an entire bottle of this stuff on the car, and I would really want to cake it on there. Hopefully let it do its thing. So make sure we get it mixed, because I did mix it so concentrated. And make sure I don't suck out all the soap right off the bottom. And then I always fill up my wash bucket after I've foamed the car. One, it gives me something to do while I'm waiting for the foam to run off and do its thing. And then secondly, you know, then I get better, like my suds don't dissipate. So I'm getting fresh suds when I'm ready to touch the car. Yeah. 175. You might want to stick with, you know, 150. You know, it's not mixing as well, because so you probably don't need to use quite as much soap as I did. All right, so and this is the beauty of having this, all those quick disconnected. Just connect it. I'm going to run it at full, you know, all the way to full plus. Stuff foams really well too. So the nice thing about the PF22, the better foam cannon over the original foam cannon or some of the knockoffs, is I've got this on full tilt. We had great foam. I'm running 2.8 gallons per minute through this thing, and yet I've covered this giant Tahoe and I've only gone through half the bottle. So it's much more efficient. Not only do you get better foam, but you use less soap, and you don't have to rush it. You know, when you use the regular thing, I'd be through this bottle already. Take the rest of this and dump it in the bucket here in preparation for wash. So generally, we're going to want to let this sort of run. I'm going to get moving on this car quickly because it is so contaminated. We have so much junk on it. There's a little bit of sun hitting the back. You could also consider rinsing this off. I don't do that. I want to keep the soap on the car as long as possible and let it do its thing. Let it remove as much of the wax and seal and junk as possible. I'm not really worried about all the dirt that's sitting on it, and worried about trying to get that off in order to avoid scratching, because, you know, theoretically I'm going to polish the car after I decontaminate it anyway. But anyway, we're going to let this run. Let's get the bucket set up. So I'll dump the rest in my wash bucket. I want to rinse this out well because I don't want to use this soap on a car that's finished, if I can help it. So this stuff is great, man. I mean, it smells good. It doesn't destroy your hands. You know, it is a little bit rougher on your hands than, say, Adams is. It suds up extremely well. And, of course, does its job. And then I feel like it strips better than others, leaves less residue than others. So I think, and it's really not as expensive as even like Adams car shampoo. So, you know, it's not crazy expensive. You know, at 32 bucks a gallon, not to mention you'll probably have that gallon for the rest of your life. You know, I have my original gallon, so, and I wash a lot of cars. That there, and we're ready to wash. So I'm using a chemical or a Microfiber Madness wash mitt to work through the car. I'm also going to get a Rag Company bug sponge out because we're going to need it for some of these other areas of the bumper. All right, so washing on this is really nothing special other than, again, we want to get as much off the car as we can. And, you know, because this is the decontamination step, I'm a little less concerned about marring and scratching. And so I might, like on some of the lower panels, I might add a little more pressure, or a lot more pressure than I normally would if the car was completely, you know, completely protected and decontaminated and polished. So wow, the C-quartz is certainly still on here. You know, I can feel lots of contaminants. But we're going to be able to decon this thing really easily. The areas, the lower fenders and things like that are going to be in rough shape, but I think in general this is going to come out. This is going to get cleaned off really easily, even with the neglect that I've done on this car. So again, I wouldn't want to be using as much pressure as I am if the car wasn't already kind of jacked up. I'm telling you, the slickness of this soap is fantastic. I'd almost like to use this soap all the time. Let me get a bug sponge too. So this is just a Rag Company. They have that, so it's microfiber on one side and like the honeycomb weave on the other. Just throw that in the bucket. So, you know, I'm doing this for the sake of the video, but generally you're going to want to go, you know, a normal pattern will be top to bottom. And so I'm just doing the front here just because the sun is kind of funky, but again, generally you're going to want to do this like normal. This is really telling that I can see on camera. You know, I showed you earlier what it looked like. It's really telling that, you know, when people are complaining about me washing already clean cars, this is about as dirty of a car as you're ever going to see in my garage. This is dirty by anybody's standards. And it's still on camera. Looks a little cleaner than it looks a lot cleaner than it actually is. And so again, in a normal wash on a corrected car, I would want to get whatever bugs I can get just by doing just dragging the sponge across the paint. But because I'm going to be polishing this thing afterward, I'm not as concerned about that. Now I don't want to induce scratching if I can help it. There's no reason to add more. But right now I'm more concerned with getting the stuff off the car. So again, Chemical Guy citrus wash, foam it, prepare your bucket, wash the car, get as much of the contaminants off before we go to step 2, which would be to use an iron remover. So normally, to get these bugs off, I would come back, I would rinse the car and then come back just to avoid any marring from any dirt that's still sitting on the paint. But right now, I just want to get this clean so I don't have to worry about it quite as much. Get the bugs off. We're going to go through, we're going to work through washing the car, but that's Chemical Guy Citrus Red. Let's see, I'm going to go through and follow a lot of the cleaning of these areas with a bug sponge, because it's just because of how dirty this thing is. So, you know, this would be for this process. You know, if your car's pretty contaminant free, you may not need to break something like this out. But for Michelle's car, that's really been neglected here, is this, you know, this extra step has been necessary to get it cleaned up the way that I want it. And as normal, I've already done the wheels. Just clean those like normal. And so I like to get as much of the bugs and heavy, you know, the real heavy stuff off before I even addressed the clay. I just find it makes it easier. So this is where we're going to use some Tarex. I'm also going to hit the bottom of the door jambs. So keep working through, doing the same thing on the other side. I'm also going to hit the engine bay really fast too while we're at this process. All right, so while we're cranking this out, I'm going to switch to deionized water, and then we're going to just do the quick engine bay cleaning. Now is the time to do it. You don't want to. I don't like to clean the engine bay when the cars are already largely clean, or especially after it's protected. The cleanest part of the car. All right, so let's hit this with, hold that for 1 second. Let's hit this with some APC. So I have 3-to-1 diluted power clean. Again, this doesn't look too bad. Oh, don't breathe that in. Don't do that. Let that sit for 30 seconds or so. I'm gonna come back around. This is where having a boar's hair or having like a wheel brush would be useful. I just don't like having it in my bucket. So I just use my race glaze brush that I use on my lugs, my wheels, just to agitate. And I found that if I keep the engine pretty clean when I'm doing my decon like this, all I have to do is just do a quick agitation, and I'll be back to clean. Because I'm constantly wiping this out. Every time I wash the car, which hasn't been often on this car, but in general, I would just hit this as part of my real quick decontamination process. That's about all we need to do. Everything looks pretty good. All right, so go ahead and rinse. My dad's gonna rinse off. Again, I'm using deionized water. I think it'd be better to rinse it with DI, that way I don't have to worry about drying. Hit the engine bay with some Meguiar's D170 hyper dressing. And then all I do is just spray this and leave it. This is diluted 4-to-1, and you get a really awesome matte looking finish on everything. You don't have to come in and dry it generally. And then my first dry, the first time I dry the car after washing it, then what I'll do is wipe any high spots off. So I'm going to clean out my buckets. My dad's going to rinse this off, and we'll come back and talk to you about doing the Iron X step. But this is the process you go through with Chemical Guy Citrus Wash. Just washing the car like normal, getting it clean, getting it stripped, and then the nice part about it is you know, the paint, the surface. This isn't going to strip off a coating, but it will strip off waxes and sealants. Even though this is coated, I want to get as much crap off the car as I can because I'm going to put a new sealant on it. Because what happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor, foot to the floor.